158. Likkutei Drushim the Succos. 158. First column. 10 lines in the end of the page. So, the Rebbe was explaining before the difference between the level of Mayim and Yayin. It has to be both levels together. And he says that you need to reach a level to establish it in the heart that it shouldn't move after davening. So you need to learn and to daven and keep it going. So he says, right at the end of the brackets, so the person has to do the awakening from below. To dig deeply in the well. What comes from the source. Very deep under the earth. Like we say in Shemon Esrei, in the Likkutei Netzor, that my soul should be like dirt. Simply means I should have humility. But here the Rebbe is saying, what does it mean my soul should be like dirt? Just like in order to reach the well, you need to dig deeply in the ground. A person sometimes needs to dig deeply within them to be able to find this level of godliness within them that would have the level of mayim and yayin and the wine and the water and all that stuff. There's a very interesting interpretation of the Rebbe. The Gemara says that when Mashiach comes by Tchias HaMeisim, it says Tzadikim yachzuru la'ofram l'rega. It says Tzadikim are going to be, everybody has to die, because it says Ofer atov al ofer toshuv, you come from dust to dust. So it says that what are people that are alive when Mashiach comes? What's going to be with their Tchias HaMeisim? They're alive. So the Gemara says, the Medrash says that they're going to die for a second and right away get up. Just for a split second to fulfill the concept of being dirt, dust to dust. But the Rebbe explains it's possible that a Jew could reach that level through nafshi ka'afar lakol tiyah by having complete humility. By having complete humility, then it's possible for the person to have that aspect of dying, so to speak, without physically dying. And that's the whole inyan of nafshi. And in fact, there's another interesting explanation of the Rebbe. It sounds very simple, but it's very profound. And that is, we say like this. And then we say like this. V'nafshi ka'afar lakol tihiyah. And my soul should have humility. And then we say, Psach libi b'sarasecha. Open up my heart in your Torah. Seemingly it's two separate things. One, I should have humility, and then we're asking Hashem to open up our heart in Torah. The Rebbe says no. The introduction and the prerequisite of Hashem opening up our hearts and minds in Torah is by the person having bittul. When a person is in nafshi ka'afar lakol tiyah, it's not two separate things. I should be like, have humility and God. So the only way Hashem can open up our hearts in Torah is through the level of a nafshi ka'afar lakol tiyah. And here the Rebbe is saying that the concept of nafshi ka'afar lakol tiyah means a person has to dig so deeply within him to find the wellspring which everything else comes from. Shibachinas v'gam lahamek iyon sichla be'isa k'torah v'chisel, and also to delve your mind into the laws of Torah. Shibachinas chachmi lo, which Torah is the chachma of Hashem, which is called Reishisa Dekul and Nimshach Mimokar Mayim Chaim El Yenim, because everything comes from the well, the living water, meaning the well of Hashem. Ulamati Yiri V'Nishtal Shema'ed, and then it comes down so low, Achem Bechinas Mitachatz La'afar. And then it comes, in other words, like this. Everything in the physical world has an origin in a spiritual source. Now, physical desires is earthly, very earthly. And he's saying it's even below the earth. Because even Torah talks about agriculture, which is below the earth, planting the seeds. You don't plant on top of the earth, you plant it below the earth. So he says the origin of that is a level of the well springs that a person digs deeply into, but when it comes down low, it comes down physically below the earth, meaning even lower than just regular gashmistika things. And that's what it says. Mimayne HaYeshua, the Alter Rebbe mentioned before, it says, Ushafta mayim besasin, for the pouring of the water. Ushafta mayim besasin, you should draw water with joy. Mimayne, from the well springs, plural. So the Rebbe asked before, the Alter Rebbe asked before, so what is the plural of well springs? So he said, is the wellspring of Hashem, meaning you have to deep into deeper levels of godliness which are normally not revealed, and the person has to dig in within themselves into that. So there's two wells. There's the wellspring of the Jew, which is revealed, by the way, in Yom Kippur and Ne'ilah, and then there's the wellsprings of God, which refers, just like a well is concealed in the ground, and you have to dig deeper to reveal it. There are levels of godliness that are completely concealed. And a person through Avodah, Torah mitzvahs, actually digs in those wells up there to reveal the wellsprings of godliness, meaning the levels of godliness which are normally concealed. And that's what it said, Mayane HaYeshua. Shem Beis Bechinas, Bechinas Naf, Shikaf Alakol Tihya. Number one is the level of the person's well. And the level of Torah that deals, a lot of halachas in Torah deal with earthly things. For instance, the whole Seder Zroim, 1/6 of Mishnayos, deal with agricultural laws. Except Masechta Brach, the whole order of Zroim deals with plant life. Things growing. And Dafka, through that digging, Nikr Bechinas Mayim Chayim, becomes this living water. Halachically, water that's on top of the ground, that it's visible water, ocean water, is not called Mayim Chayim, living water. Living water is water that comes from a well that needs to be dug. And then it becomes Mayim Chayim, living water. Why? Because when you dig deep into physical water, then you're causing the spiritual water to be dug, so to speak, that level of earth. Okay, really there's a bracket, but let's see it. And the explanation of the two of Hashem Bakar Beis Mayonis Hanal. Hine Bechinas Nafshi Ka'afel Koltiya. It says, this is what it says in the Zayah. Ma bein Afer la'afak. What is the difference between dirt and dust? There's dust and there's dirt. So the Zayah explains what's the difference between the two. He says, Afer dechol even nafke minei. He says everything grows not from dust. You can't grow things on dust. You can only grow things from earth. And that's why it's interesting. When Yaakov was fighting the Malach, and they kicked up it's a Vayei Avek Ishimei. Rashi says, Avak means dust, not dirt. Rashi said, why does it say by Yaakov Avinu that the Malach dusted him? So Rashi said, when two people are fighting, they kick up dust, but you don't kick up dirt. There's a difference between dirt and dust. He says, and Dafka through offer. Can you dig the living water well, which is Avad Shebechinas Mayim, which is the level of Bittul. So one level of offer is, like he says, the person digging deeply into their, in other words, even in your house, you don't dust dirt. When you clean your house, you don't dust dirt, you dust dust. Because dust is minimal, and therefore it's not so thick. Dirt, on the other hand, a well doesn't come from dust. A well comes from the ground. Things don't grow from dust. Things grow from dirt. It's a much deeper level. It's more dirty, so to speak. But bottom line is that's where things grow, and that's where things, all that stuff.
So what was the significance about the angel and Yaakov kicking dust?
No, as I'm saying that even when an angel fights a Jew, that fight of Yaakov and Esav is not only that fight. It's like the Ramban says, whatever happened to them happens to us. So when a Jew is fighting the Yetzer Hara, Yaakov fighting the angel, Kedusha fighting the Yetzer Hara, the only thing evil could do to the Jew is dust him. It can't bury the Jew in dirt. It can only get you a little bit, because the neshama is always pure.
Cover him a little bit.
Yeah, it can cover a little bit of dust.
It could go on like this.
They get it away.
You can wash it off.
You can blow it away. You can dust it away. Sometimes, we said, this neshama that the Jew has within him is sometimes deep within the person. So sometimes you could blow it off. Sometimes you need like a fan or something. Sometimes you might even need a bulldozer. Sometimes you can have a shovel, would be good enough. Sometimes to dig something up from the ground, you can use a shovel. You want to get gold and diamonds from the ground, you can't use a shovel. You really need to dig deep. Yeah, that's where the real diamonds are. The diamonds are not buried superficially in the ground. They're not like, half a foot in is where all the diamonds. They're much, much deeper. So Chassidus explains what is that in Ruchnius. The spiritual realm, what is that? It's the level that the real greatness of the Jew is when it's deep within them. That's why, one of the reasons why a Baal Tshuva is greater than the Tzaddik, because the Baal Tshuva, in order to do Tshuva, has to really dig deep, because superficially they're not behaving in Torah mitzvahs. They're not doing Torah, they're not keeping Torah mitzvahs. So they need to dig deep to awaken a new level of water that the surface doesn't have. But then it's called Mayim Chayim, like the Alter Rebbe says. Water on top of the earth is not called living water. It doesn't create things. So sometimes the person digs deeper. And that's why one of the reasons why Baal Tshuva is greater than a tzaddik.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
after death, changing to dust or dirt? After death.
After we're dead,
Yeah.
we become dirt. Then the neshama goes to Gan Eden.
The body becomes
The body gets eaten by worms and maggots and all that stuff.
Because the sun bones is left, it's not getting there.
The loose bone stays, because that's for Hashem to do Tchias HaMesim.
Yeah.
But nowadays it's sealed in a
It's still rots. It still decomposes.
No maggots or anything.
Whatever. It
No, they make it.
I know what they do.
Oh, they make a hole.
There's still holes on the side to the earth at the bottom. One of the reasons why you can't use a metal casket, because the body doesn't decompose well in metal.
How about the tea?
Huh?
The tea also they take it out? Like
The
they
teeth?
covered in tea like gold.
No.
They took it out?
Only like the Russians have gold, sometimes they steal the teeth. The mortuaries steal the teeth. Who's gonna know?
It's not only Russian. All over the world they used to use gold.
Yeah, years ago.
They used to.
In Russia, people that had a lot of gold teeth was a sign of wealth and prosperity.
That's right.
Like in Russia, if a lady was fat, it was like real good.
In Russia too?
Everywhere.
Wow, I thought it was
Fatness was
Not in America.
beauty.
Because it showed you had food
Yeah,
to
food.
eat and everything.
Same thing was in Europe.
In fact, the Gemara discusses that the women used to wear very tight necklaces around the neck, that then it's squeezed so the skin blows up a little bit around there. So they look,
Oh wow.
Okay, and the second level of dirt. That's the level, what it says in the pasuk. Mi mana afer Yaakov. It says Bilam said, who will count the dirt of Yaakov? The koi aleisik hatera, which refers to the level of Torah, which is called offer. Shudav she'ein begader mispar. She'ein begader mispar b'chinas lefnei echad mata sefer. Which again, Torah is also of an infinite nature. Look, it says in Likkutei, okay, v'ayim kutu Torah v'kach kotzim erech offer. Shezehu afer is zohav. That refers to gold dust. Like it says in the Medrash in Koheles. It says, Shlomo Melech says, everything came from the dirt. Everything came from the dirt. So it says that even the rotation of the sun, because Shlomo Melech says in Koheles, everything came from the dirt. Hakom min ha'afar. So the Medrash says, even the Galgal Hacham, even the rotation of the sun and all that is also from that level of offer. But it's not from the earthly offer, it's from the heavenly offer. Baim says, okay, Maj calls okay, I say Torah.
Sorry, I didn't get the idea of why rotation of the sun.
That's what the Medrash says.
How is it related to offer?
Because it comes from the spiritual offer. The offer that the spiritual offer from above.
It's in the Medrash.
Yeah.
Torah.
No, Shlomo Melech says in Mishlei that Hakom min ha'afar, everything comes from dirt. That's what Shlomo Melech says. And then in Koheles, in Koheles, Shlomo Melech says everything comes from the dirt. And then the Medrash says, what do you mean everything? Even the heavenly things also come from the dirt. Now obviously it can't come from the physical dirt, because so it comes from the spiritual level of offer, which is, as we said, the deeper levels of godliness that are
Symbolized by humility.
right. Okay, this
God humble, Rabbi?
what?
God humble.
God is very humble. Huh?
Who would reduce himself just for...
I told you there's a very famous question that even religious people ask. Many, many years ago, there was an article in the Jewish press, when I was like a bocher. There was an article in the Jewish press, a guy wrote a whole thing, why is God so haughty? Look, I am God, your God that took you out of Egypt. You have to listen to me because I'm your God. Look, because God has an ego problem. No, that's what it... And they answered some, pardon the expression, cockamamie answer. So then, I remember, I was a high school kid. Gershon Schusterman, that lives here now, was a bocher then in 770. He wrote a whole explanation to them, and they printed it in the Jewish press the week later. He wrote an explanation of Pichsidis, what does it mean that God is or haughty? Why is that? And he explained the whole concept of haughtiness and humility doesn't mean I'm a nothing. Like we learned millions of times, right? You know who you are, you know your greatness, but you realize somebody with the same level of greatness would even be greater. Like that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble person that ever lived, right? If somebody asked him who got the Torah on Har Sinai, he would say me. If not, he'd be a liar. Who did God speak to? Me. Who is the greatest prophet that ever existed? Me. Why isn't that haughtiness? And Moshe Rabbeinu yet was the most humble person that ever lived. Or if you're speaking yeshiva English, the most humblest person that ever lived. So what, like, how do you reconcile that?
So why shouldn't we stand up for our Rav?
Do me a favor, don't go there. Please. So the answer is humility, and that's what he spoke by Hashem, the whole concept. In fact, there's a famous Zohar. At the beginning of the Rebbe's leadership, the Rebbe said certain things. Some of them were eventually, they were put into Likkutei, and eventually they were taken out. The Rebbe said, it's in Chelik Beis, some of them still have it, I think later they took it out. The Rebbe said that the Rebbe is Atzmus Ein Sof in a guf, the essence of God in the body. and the whole from a world. And the Rebbe explains in that Sikha that it's a Gemara, it's a Zayar. Rashbi said, Man Pnei Odain, who is the face of God? Rashbi. And in the Gemara, there's also, not Gemara, Medrash that says another rabbi said that basically the same, in different language, he said exactly the same thing. How can Rashbi, you know what Rashbi was? He was a very great man. Rashbi says, who is the face of God? Me.
Who's Rashbi?
Reb Shimon Bar Yochai.
Oh.
Reb Shimon Bar Yochai said, who is the face of God? And the explanation is, he was so non-existent. When Rashbi also said, and this is the Gemara says, it says, if there's two tzaddikim in this generation, it's me and my son. And if there's one, it's me. I mean, that's pretty bad. From a secular, non-Hasidic perspective, for that matter, it sounds pretty bad. I mean, you can't get bigger ego than that I am the face of God, and I am the guy of the generation. So explanation is, humility doesn't mean I'm a nobody. Rashbi knew exactly who he was. And Rashbi knew that he was the greatest tzaddik in his generation. He knew that. And he had to know that. Because if he didn't know that, he'd be fooling himself. And the worst thing, from a Torah perspective, is to be a fake, not to be real. Torah is emes. You have to be emes. How can Rashbi come along and say that level? The answer is, Rashbi understood, it's not me. It's not my doing. God gave me that neshama. If somebody else would have been given that neshama, that potential, there would even be greater. That's what humility is. When a father says to a child, they used to. Yesterday, there were a bunch of kids running in the building. So somebody went over to them and said to the parent, you can't have the kids are not allowed to be in the building. You're not allowed to. He said, I can't control them. Okay? But normally, normal people, when they say to a child, you have to listen to me because I'm your father. A boss says to a worker, you have to do it my way because I'm the boss. Is that ego?
It goes without saying.
It's not ego. It's reality. I'm your father. You got to listen to me. I'm your boss. I pay you. You have to listen to me. Nobody says it's ego. When God says, you have to listen to me. I made you. I created you. I give you everything you have. I wake you up. Yeah, you have to listen. That's not ego. It's not God has an ego. And let me tell you even more. When the parent says to the child, you have to listen to me, for whose benefit is it? The father's or the child's? It's for the child's benefit. It's not the father's benefit. I mean, unless he's a crazy egomaniac. But normally a father says to a child, you have to listen to me for your benefit. I know, I'm older, I know better, I'm supposed to know better. I know better what's right and what's wrong. You have to listen to me when I tell you what to do and what not to do. It's not when the father says to the child, or the boss says to the worker, you have to listen to me, is because the boss officiates his business, he feels better, he knows about it better. So he says to him, you have to listen to me, because this is for your benefit, not for my benefit. So when Hashem says to a Jew, you have to listen to me, I am God that took you out of Egypt, I am God that created you, I am God. So it's not, for number one, it's reality, it's not ego. Secondly, it's for our benefit listening to God. So what type of problem is you have? God is egotistic and everybody has to listen to me? Yeah, everybody has to listen to me. Number one, he's the boss.
He wasn't saying to benefit from it in any way.
Yeah, but when you look at Torah from a secular perspective, or for that matter, from a non-Hasidic perspective, God says, I am God, you have to listen to me. I'm God, you have to listen to me. I'm God, I'm God, I'm God, and Hashem, and Hashem, and Hashem. Come on. Why? That's ego. From a secular perspective, that is a sign of ego. The reality is, it's not ego, it's reality. It's like a father telling a child, you have to listen to me. Yeah, but people have an issue with that. I heard it from myself, a lot of people. People saying, why, look at, the God has an ego problem. You know, yeah, he has to emphasize, I'm God. Okay, say it once and we know already. No, he constantly says it.
So self-centered.
Yeah, God is self-centered.
Also, Rabbi, psychology affected. If you say something to people, they affected them. You know, this is good point.
Sometimes. But if they have a stone heart, it just bounces off.
My case is stone head.
I won't tell you what they say about you. No, that's the story. So, when Rashbi said, I am Man Peri Odin, who is the face of God, that's Rashbi. It's not, that's reality.
What did the Rebbe say? The Rebbe is what? Atzmas?
Atzmas are himself in a guf.
But isn't every Jew like that?
Not the level of Atzmas himself. It's Chelak Alaka Mimal, but it's not Atzmas himself in the body.
And why did they take it out?
Because I think they took it out. It's in Chelak Beis Yitzhak. Because the Rebbe didn't want to make a whole thing in the world.
With the order of
But it was taken out many years later. No.
Rebbe.
The Rebbe told him to take it out. That's what I heard. Okay.
Sabur